Deadly outbreak. The death toll continues to rise from the coronavirus in China. How U.S. health officials are responding. College of Cardinals. There are new faces atop the group that elects the Pope. We're in Rome. First Holy Communion. A rare glimpse at the Catholic background of Kobe Bryant, the former basketball star who died on Sunday. And interfaith efforts. A conference examines the role Catholics played in trying to save lives during the Holocaust. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, January 28th, 2020.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The United States has issued a level 3 travel warning encouraging Americans to delay any trips to China. Health officials are trying to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The respiratory disease is now blamed for killing more than 100 people and sickening over more than 4,000 in mainland China.
The coming days and weeks are likely to bring more confirmed cases here and around the world, including the possibility of some person-to-person spread. But our goal of the ongoing U.S. public health response is to contain this outbreak and prevent sustained spread of the virus in our country.
A handful of travelers have already brought the disease back to America. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is tracking those cases and monitoring anyone that patients may have come in contact with.
It's essential that we detect illness among contacts in order to make sure that if these contacts are infected, they get the best and most appropriate care, and they understand what steps they must take to prevent spreading of the illness to others.
20 U.S. airports are checking incoming passengers for signs of illness. The U.S. is also chartering a flight to bring hundreds of U.S. government workers and other citizens back home from the most affected part of China. One researcher says the sharp rise in infections suggests the virus is quickly spreading from person to person. President Donald Trump unveils his administration's much-anticipated Middle East peace plan. It is the latest American attempt to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The plan was revealed as the Prime Minister of Israel visited the White House. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports now. Mark?
Tracy, it's a long shot for this deal to become reality. That's because Palestinians are already rejecting the plan. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel and his political opponent praised the plan. President Trump has presented a two-state solution for Israelis and Palestinians. He says achieving peace is an obligation for humanity.
As I have seen throughout my long career as a deal maker, complex problems require nuanced, fact-based remedies. That is why our proposal provides precise technical solutions to make Israelis, Palestinians, and the region safer and much more prosperous.
President Trump says his Mideast peace plan offers a win-win opportunity for both sides. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calls it a historic day for Israel.
On this day, you became the first world leader to recognize Israel's sovereignty over areas in Judea and Samaria that are vital to our security and central to our heritage.
And President Trump believes his two-state solution offers plenty for Palestinians as well.
I want this deal to be a great deal for the Palestinians. It has to be. Today's agreement is a historic opportunity for the Palestinians to finally achieve an independent state of their very own.
The plan calls for the creation of a state of Palestine with its capital in portions of East Jerusalem and doubles the territory currently under Palestinian control. But it would require them to welcome conditions they have been previously unwilling to consider, such as accepting West Bank settlements.
To ensure a successful Palestinian state, we are asking the Palestinians to meet the challenges of peaceful coexistence.
The U.S. Embassy in Israel has issued a warning to American citizens following President Trump's peace plan announcement. It prohibits U.S. government employees and their families from travel in most of Jerusalem's Old City, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip because of widespread calls for demonstrations by Palestinians. Tracy.
White House correspondent Mark Irons. Thank you, Mark. Well, President Trump's legal team wraps up arguments in his impeachment trial today as senators continue to wrestle with whether to allow new witness testimony. Pressure is mounting for at least 4 Republicans to buck party leaders and form a bipartisan majority to force the issue. Catholic news agency's Matt Hadra reports now from Capitol Hill.
Good evening, Tracy. The president's defense lawyers battled against information leaked from a forthcoming book by former National Security Advisor John Bolton. The information reportedly substantiates claims that are at the heart of the impeachment trial that President Trump withheld military aid from the Ukraine for personal reasons. Democratic senators say they want to hear Bolton testify.
The details from Ambassador Bolton get to the very heart of the first article of impeachment.
Democratic leader Chuck Schumer is eager to hear from former National Security Advisor John Bolton and criticizes Republican senators for standing in the way.
They are always looking for a shiny object to divert attention from the facts and the law against the president.
The president's defense attorneys argue the facts are on their side.
Do abuse of power and obstruction of Congress constitute impeachable offenses? The relevant history answers that question clearly in the negative.
And Republican Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi backs up the president's team.
I don't think the testimony of Ambassador Bolton would be helpful, because I basically think, in agreement with the very scholarly approach that Mr. Dershowitz gave, that there's no article there that is grounds for impeachment or removal.
If the Senate does vote for witnesses, Republicans want the right to call more people than just John Bolton.
If we ever get to the question of witnesses, that it certainly is going to be reciprocal.
The Democratic leader hedges, saying it's possible the witnesses they want will help the president's case.
We don't know what they'll say. It could be exculpatory. It could be incriminating. We don't know, but we're willing to hear it.
The next step, senators have 16 hours for written questions to both sides. The vote is expected later this week on whether or not to hear from any witnesses. At the Capitol, Matt Hadro, EWTN News Nightly.
We'll have more impeachment trial coverage coming up. Representative Jody Hice of Georgia will join us from Capitol Hill to share his perspective. We are following a developing story near Cuba and Jamaica. The U.S. Geological Survey says a powerful magnitude 7.7 earthquake struck between the two islands this afternoon. There were no immediate reports of serious injuries, but people in nearby Cayman Islands report cracked roads and broken pipes. A U.S. official says the remains of 2 American service members have been recovered from the site of a plane crash in Afghanistan. The aircraft was used by Americans for electronic surveillance. The plane went down around 6 miles from a military base in an area controlled by the Taliban. At least 54 people have died in heavy rains in the southeast region of Brazil. More than 30,000 others have been forced from their homes. The downpours slowed yesterday but are expected to pick up again later this week. Officials are warning of nearly 4 inches of rain in the next 3 days. Britain says it will work with the Chinese tech giant despite a warning from the United States not to do so. The United Kingdom says it will allow Huawei to supply new high-speed network equipment. The U.S. has said that it would sever, that is, intelligence cooperation with Britain if it worked with a tech company. American officials fear that Huawei would give China access to Britain's government data. The company denies those claims. Pope Francis appoints a new dean and vice dean of the College of Cardinals. Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re will head up the Cardinals for the next 5 years, along with Cardinal Leonardo Sandri as vice dean. Pope Francis established this 5-year term in December, once the previous dean of Cardinals resigned after serving for 15 years. Andrea Gagliarducci, EWTN News Vatican analyst, joins us now from Rome. Andrea, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Andrea, tell us about these 2 cardinals and who elects them.
So, Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re has been elected Dean of the College of Cardinals, and Cardinal Leonardo Sandri has been elected Vice Dean. Both of them are long-term Vatican diplomats. They held positions in the Vatican Diplomatic Corps. Cardinal Re ranked up the scale of the Secretary of State, till being the sostituto, the deputy, which is the number 2 of the Secretary of State. Cardinal Re was also after that prefect of the Congregation of Bishops. Cardinal Sandri was sostituto as well, and now is prefect of the Eastern Congregation for the Eastern Churches. Both of them will be, how can I say, primus inter pares, first among equals. They are the cardinals that will chair the meetings of the College of Cardinals.
And what's the role of the Dean of Cardinals, and how does that weigh into the Vatican's decision-making?
Well, the Dean of Cardinals does not really get into the Vatican decision-making. As I said, he's a first among equals. His role is mostly, it comes out during the meetings of the College of Cardinals, which he presides. When a cardinal dies, he presides the funeral of the cardinal. Then, when the Pope dies or renounces, the Dean of the College of Cardinals has to send the news of the death or renunciation to all the head of state and diplomatic corps. And then he has to organize the pre-conclave meetings that are called general congregations. And then, if he's beyond the age of 80, he's going to preside at the conclave. If he's not beyond the age of 80, and Cardinal Re is 85 now, he will not get into the conclave because only cardinals under the age of 80 are eligible to be in a conclave. So the Vice Dean will take over the position. Actually, Cardinal Re already presided a conclave because he presided in 2013 the conclave that led to Pope Francis' election. He was the third in the rank of cardinals, but Cardinal Sodano was already beyond the age of 80, and also Cardinal Echegaray, that was the Vice Dean at the time, was already beyond the age of 80.
Well, Andrea, changes to the Curia could come this year. How will that influence this, and what do you think we can expect?
Well, the office of the Dean of the Cardinals has been changed also because of Curia reform. According to the Curia reform, the draft that has not been announced, but we know something about that, all the positions within the Curia will be on a 5-year term that is renewable just one time. When Pope Francis reformed the office of the Dean of Cardinals, he said that the Dean of Cardinals can be on the position for 5 years and then it can be renewed one time. It's different because before it was lifelong mandate. So that's how it's affecting the office of the Dean of Cardinals. Actually, as I said, since he's the first among equals, he does not have any power of supervision over other cardinals, so he's not going to be into decision-making, so this is not going into the Curia reform.
Andrea, thank you so much for your insight. Andrea Gagliarducci, EWTN News Vatican Analyst. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, a lawmaker weighs in on whether there should be witnesses in the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump. Plus, an update on one of the president's staunchest allies on Capitol Hill.
One of President Trump's strongest allies in the House of Representatives wants to move to the Senate. Representative Doug Collins from Georgia is expected to announce his run for Senate later this year. Collins has served 4 terms in the House. If he runs, he would battle Republican Kelly Loeffler, who was appointed by the state governor. Loeffler has supported several pro-life measures. Collins says that he also works tirelessly to protect the lives of the unborn. President Trump's defense team wrapped up closing arguments today in his Senate impeachment trial, but as we reported earlier, the question remains whether witnesses will be called to testify. Joining me now from Capitol Hill is Congressman Jody Hice, Republican from Georgia. He is also a member of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform. Congressman, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Well, you've expressed your support for the president. You say he did nothing wrong, yet the question of calling witnesses remains. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, listen, we're going to see what happens. The way this thing is supposed to happen is that the House does the investigation, the House calls witnesses, the House gets all the information, the so-called evidence, and then they pass it over to the Senate, and based upon the evidence that the Senate receives, they have a trial. So it's not required that the Senate call forth witnesses. Of course, in this case, the evidence, so-called, that the House passed over is absolutely no evidence at all. It has been a sham from beginning. There is second, third, fourth hand information, 17, and all that in spite of there being 17 witnesses called in the House, not a single one representing the president's side of the story or Republican side of the story. So it's 17-0. And now the Democrats are demanding that we go, 18-0 witnesses, Democrat witnesses, anti-Trump witnesses. I don't know what's going to happen, but I hope that if the Senate is going to have witnesses, I certainly hope that they have witnesses like Hunter Biden, possibly Joe Biden, Adam Schiff, the whistleblower. These are the type of witnesses who really need to come forward.
Well, Congressman, some Republican senators are proposing the idea of subpoenaing, that is, John Bolton's book manuscript, so senators can see the evidence themselves in private. And also Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted that he supports the idea. What's your reaction, and do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but even if they do that, there's nothing in the book, at least as has been reported to this point, that is impeachable in itself anyway. This is just another attempt by the Democrats to try to, at the last minute, throw another wrench in things, to try to throw what they believe might be a bombshell that will sway public opinion or sway the opinion of the senators. But again, there's nothing there. This is just another political attempt, as has been the case from the very first day the president was elected to office. The attempt has been to get rid of him, and it's another last-ditch effort to try to do so. But if they go that route, I really don't believe it will alter in the least bit the outcome. The president is going to be acquitted because the president has done nothing worthy of impeachment.
As a member of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, I know you've reviewed the evidence. How do you think this is all going to play out, and do you think this is going to have a lasting impact on the president?
You know, you consider that question, which is a great question, but look at what's happening tonight in New Jersey. I mean, mobs, thousands and thousands of people, over 100,000 requests from people to get tickets to go into a building that seats 10,000 people. And many of them have been waiting for over 48 hours to be a part of this. That is the sentiment of the American people towards this president. They love his policies. We have a booming economy. We have low unemployment. We have our military back. We have support for Israel. We have trade deals around the country. One thing after another, the people understand that this president has the back of our country and the citizens of this country, and they love it. They're flocking by the droves to hear him and to express their gratitude to him. So at the end of the day, I think this president is in very good shape, and I believe, frankly, the further the Democrats trying to harm him, the bigger the movement in support of the president becomes.
Okay, quickly before I let you go, I'd like to ask you about comments that you made last week when you were back home in Georgia on the need for prayer right now. Can you share a little bit more about what you meant by that?
Yeah, listen, I am unapologetically a Christian. I believe deeply in prayer. And, you know, I just believe that we are at a point in our nation's history where there is such divide, such hateful rhetoric, and these are issues that we cannot resolve by passing another bill, another piece of legislation. What is happening in our country is magnifying a deeper problem, a spiritual problem. And I believe now is a time for us to pray like we have never prayed before, for our president, for our leaders, for our country, for people who have differing views. And so it's encouraging for me to be able to communicate that to the people of the 10th District of Georgia and beyond. And frankly, it resonates with the hearts of people in a great way. People know that we need no longer to kick God out of the public square, but to embrace him and to cry out to him for our country.
Congressman, thank you so much. Congressman Jody Hice, Republican from Georgia, also a member of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Up next, a look back at the Catholic upbringing of former basketball star Kobe Bryant. And Pope Francis tells the faithful the importance of being cheerful.
Il Vangelo non andrà avanti con evangeli noiosi, amareggiati.
Pope Francis says Christians without happiness are polite but empty. At his daily mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father says the gospel will only move forward with cheerful evangelizers. He adds that true joy comes from spending time with the Lord. In recognition of yesterday's 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz concentration camp, the Holy See Mission to the United Nations held a conference to remember the Holocaust and highlight the Catholic Church's efforts to save lives. The conference featured research by several of the world's leading experts on the role that the Church and Pope Pius XII played in helping to save Jews in Europe during World War II. The forum was co-sponsored by Pave the Way Foundation, which seeks to eliminate disinformation between religions. Our United Nations correspondent Sabrina Farisi was at the conference, and she joins us now from the UN in New York City with more. Sabrina, thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So, Sabrina, how many Jews were saved by Pope Pius XII, and do we have reliable figures for it?
We do have reliable figures, and the lowest figure they could give us yesterday was 847,000 Jews saved, but some believe it could be as high as 1 million. They gave us many examples of numbers from various countries. So in Rome, for example, a plot was discovered in 1943, October, that the Germans were going to round up all the Jews. Pius XII ordered 235 convents and monasteries to immediately hide the Roman population of Jews, and 4,205 Jews were saved. In Budapest, 120,000 Jews were saved out of 150,000 by the papal nuncio. And in France, 75% of the nation's Jews were saved by the Catholic bishops. Now, next month, when the Vatican archives are opened on Pius XII, we should be finding out a lot more.
Many have criticized Pope Pius XII for his silence during World War II, and other critics claim that he was somehow indifferent to the plight of the Jews. What does the research actually show?
The research shows that he was anything but indifferent. He made many statements before and during World War II. When he was Secretary of State to the Vatican in 1938, he helped write an encyclical called With Burning Anxiety in German, and it was distributed in Germany. And this encyclical attacked governments which exalted race, people, or governments and divinized them to idolatrous levels. This was clearly an attack on Nazism. Now, Pope Pius XII wanted to say more, and the Allies wanted him to say more. However, he knew that the cost could be disastrous. And an example they gave yesterday was that in 1942, the Dutch Catholic bishops issued a pastoral letter criticizing Nazism. The results were disastrous. All the Jewish Catholics in the country were immediately rounded up and deported and killed. Apparently, Pius XII had a text prepared that he was going to publish in 1942 in the Osservatore Romano, where he was going to protest these deportations of Jews. As soon as he heard what happened in Holland, he pulled the text because he didn't want any more Jews to be killed.
Sabrina, was there anything that you learned during the conference that really stood out to you or maybe surprised you?
Yes, absolutely. Apparently, Pius XII was involved in 3 anti-Hitler plots. Now, these plots were to change the German regime, not to kill Hitler. The documents were very clear. He didn't want the Vatican to be implicated in any political violence. So there were 3 coup attempts in 1939 to 1940, another one in 1943, and one in 1944. The last one was made famous by a Tom Cruise movie called Valkyrie, which maybe our viewers have seen. All the plots failed. In each plot, Pius acted as a foreign agent for the German plotters, and he was helping get their messages across to the Western allies. Professor Mark Riebling, who's a historian and he has studied the Vatican archives on this issue, wrote a book called The Church of Spies, the Pope and his Secret War Against Hitler. This book will be made into a movie next year. It should be very interesting.
It sounds very interesting. Well, Sabrina, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Sabrina Farisi, UN correspondent, thanks so much for your report.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, the tributes continue to pour in for Kobe Bryant, the former basketball star killed in a helicopter accident last Sunday. One friend recalled Bryant's Catholic upbringing in Italy. Alicia Peratini kept a photo album of their first Holy Communion. She was in the same class as Bryant and has photos of his parents and Kobe. She remembers him as always being cheerful and with a great smile. Bryant was 41 years old when he died, and he remained Catholic. Reports say that he and his 13-year-old daughter, who was also killed in the crash, went to Mass on the morning they died. Our partners at Catholic News Agency offer more information about Kobe Bryant's final hours with his church family, and you can read more at CatholicNewsAgency.com. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.